So my name is Marino, and the title of my dissertation is Acculturation and its Influence on the Social Relationships, Identity, and Sense of Well-Being in Middle School Immigrant Adolescents, a descriptive single case study. My faculty advisor is Dr. Purdom Cassidy. The problem statement of my dissertation is, every year, immigrant youth enter U.S. school systems and need to acculturate at an increasing rate as it influences their social development entering school. Previous literature has shown that acculturation and acculturative stress does influence immigrant adolescents as they enter their host country. It impacts their family, it impacts their sense of well-being and identity, as well as their social relationships. Prior research has shown that it creates stress for the family unit, especially since they have to leave their native culture and enter the host culture and start a whole new life. Depending on the acculturation experience that the immigrant adolescents choose, it can either strengthen the family bond or it can weaken it. Acculturation has also influenced the adolescent's sense of well-being and identity. Depending on which acculturative strategy that they use, as well as the experience, they can have a positive sense of well-being and identity, like they feel they belong, or they can have a negative experience and sense of well-being and identity, feeling that they don't belong and they feel isolated and alone in their host culture. It also impacts their social relationships. Again, depending on which acculturative strategy that they use, immigrant adolescents can create positive peer relationships with their friends and teachers, or they can have negative relationships with their peers and teachers. All of these strategies are based on Berry's 4 acculturative strategies of his theoretical framework of acculturation. In Berry's theoretical framework of acculturation, there are 4 strategies that immigrant adolescents choose to adopt. Integration, which is they accept both the native and the host culture into their identity. Assimilation, where they accept only the host culture and reject their native culture. Separation, they accept their native culture and reject the host cultures. And marginalization, where they reject both the native and the host culture. The purpose statement of my dissertation is that the single case study was to explore the acculturation experiences of 4 newly arrived Hispanic adolescent immigrants students in attending a middle school in Duluth, Georgia area. My 3 research questions are, how do Hispanic immigrant school students describe the experience of acculturation and the decision to choose one of the acculturation strategies? How does choosing an acculturative strategy influence Hispanic immigrant middle school students' relationships? And how does choosing an acculturative strategy influence Hispanic immigrant middle school students' sense of identity and well-being? Again, the theoretical framework for the study was Berry's model of acculturation based on his 4 strategies: integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization. Here for the methodology, I developed 3 research questions based on Berry's theoretical framework. I used a purposive sampling for participants. So I was very selective about the participants that I chose for the study. They had to meet a criteria of they were either Hispanic or Latina. They were born in another country, and they had immigrated from their native country to the United States within the last year and a half. The selection of the participants, again, was based on the purposive sampling criteria. The parents gave consent for their child to participate in the study, and the participants actually had to give assent to be a part of the study as well. Data collection for the study included 2 interviews, an initial and a follow-up, as well as 2 observations within the school setting. Once the data was collected and transcribed verbatim, I coded data, the observations, and the interviews. I created categories and codes, and then developed thematic statements. From those thematic statements, I developed 5 themes from the study, and the results were based on whether or not they answered the 3 questions based on Berry's theoretical framework of acculturation. So from my study, 5 themes emerged. Hispanic immigrants experienced difficulties acculturating due to starting over in a new country and the language barrier. All the participants stated that moving from the native country to the host country was difficult. Some had a hard time with the different cultures. Many of them, all of them actually, had difficulty with the language barrier. Some choose not to learn English, and two of the participants actually wanted to learn English and learn the culture and the ways of the United States. The second theme that emerged was Hispanic immigrant students' choice of acculturation strategy maintained familial relationships, while school interactions influenced their acculturative experience. Some of the participants kept their native traditions because it was familiar to them and it made them feel like they belonged to somewhere, especially to their family. Many of the participants also stated that they interact and engage with their family a lot more now to feel whole and feel a part. All the students mentioned that interactions at school influence their acculturative experience. Some students stated that the teachers helped them and they made them feel like they belonged and they were a part of it. And one participant stated that she did not feel like she belonged and she felt isolated and alone and actually needed reassurance from one of her teachers to feel like she was a part of something. The third theme that emerged was Hispanic immigrant students' sense of identity and well-being is contingent upon their overall acculturative experience. Two of the participants felt like they belonged in their host country and they had a holistic sense of identity. And the two other participants weren't sure that they belonged in their host country. They still felt a little bit isolated, a little bit different, and this impacted their acculturative experience. The fourth theme that emerged was students who integrated or assimilated into the host culture had a positive or better acculturative experience. Two of the participants, again, chose to integrate as their acculturative strategy and had positive experiences with their peers, teachers, and in the host country. These two participants stated that they would love to learn English so that they could build a better life here in their host culture. The last theme was students who marginalized or separated from the host culture had a negative or lower than expected acculturative experience. Two students stated that they felt separated or even marginalized from their host culture. One student chose a separation strategy. He wanted to maintain his native culture as much as possible while learning minimal English, just enough to get by. One participant felt marginalized, that she was alone and that she was isolated and she didn't belong anywhere. And this resulted in a negative experience for her. So the implications for my studies that administrators in school, they need to be aware as to how acculturation influences immigrant adolescents. And they can do this by creating or redesigning a peer social support system in their school, by having that peer with them and engaging with them and showing them the ins and outs of the school administration and what goes on in school and the programs and the schedules and whatnot, and engaging in other peer relationships. Research has shown that this helps students integrate more successfully into their host culture. Another implication is teachers and faculty need to be familiar with the four acculturative strategies. What are the characteristics of integration, assimilation, separation, and marginalization? By doing so, they can work together with counselors to identify students who are separated or marginalized and support them by having them participate in peer social systems. Again, the peer social systems are important because once the student feels like they belonged, they have a better acculturative spirit and they're more likely to integrate into the host culture. Parents of immigrant adolescents also need to be familiar with the four acculturative strategies. By familiarizing themselves with the characteristics of each strategy, they can work together with the school if they believe their student is exhibiting separation or marginalization. Another implication for the study is that future research can include qualitative studies of other ethnic groups, because there are more than Hispanic immigrant adolescents entering the United States. There are vast other ethnicities and other ethnic groups that are entering the United States, and they also need to acculturate. And future qualitative studies of families of immigrant adolescents to see what their perspective is on the acculturation experience. The distribution plan for my dissertation is professional development for administrators and teachers and faculty. Administrators can receive this information through a PowerPoint presentation going over acculturation, acculturative stress, varies for acculturative strategies, and how it impacts their students in their schools. The same thing goes for teachers and faculty. For PowerPoint presentation and pamphlets summarizing characteristics of the four culturative strategies. By having something tangible with the teachers, they can look through the pamphlet and see whether they believe a student is integrating, assimilating, separating, or marginalizing. Again, we want to focus on those that are separating, marginalizing, because they are the most at risk of having negative culturative experiences and experiencing feelings of isolation, depression, or even suicidal ideation. Distribution plan for the parents includes a town hall meeting where they also have a PowerPoint presentation and a pamphlet of the four strategies, but translators who can translate the information to them in their native language to ensure that the parents comprehend what is being addressed for their students. And here are my selected references.